all have enjoyed this short meditation. As I promised yesterday that I'm going to read for all of us this beautiful quote from this book, Unposted Letter, which has been written by T.T. Rangarajan. So there is this beautiful lines that had attracted me and which resonates to which we are reading now about Jonathan Livingston Seagull. It says that what water can do, gasoline cannot. What copper can, gold cannot. The fragility of the ant enables it to move. The rigidity of the tree enables it to stay rooted. Everything and everybody has been designed with a proportion of uniqueness to serve a purpose. How can I be anyone other than me, even if I have my share of weaknesses? Why should I struggle to be someone else? Even if someone's strengths appeal to me, I'm here to be I. So these are the beautiful lines that I have read from this book and that had attracted me a lot. It is making us understand that we are all unique and we are not here to compare ourselves with others. If there is anything that we can get inspired from others, we should get inspired, but not imitating or but not comparing. We have to keep working on ourselves time and again. So, as we heard yesterday, Jonathan was a solo seagull who was in truth, and the truth was that we should not limit ourselves and we are all limitless beings. That was the message that Jonathan had shared yesterday, that with his practice, continuous practice, failed and again he practiced. So he never gave up. There was a voice within Jonathan that said, "Hey, give up. What are you doing? You just have to go ahead with the flock. Why you have to be alone and do all these things where you are not getting any result from? You are not like that. You don't have this. You don't have that. That is the reason why you are not able to do that." So again, something struck him that, oh, I should not listen to that voice. Let me work more. So that is when he had worked on himself, and he had experienced amazing things about flight and how to reach height and how not to have fear and how not to be bored. So all these things Jonathan had experienced, and yesterday two seagulls had visited when we were reading. There were two seagulls who had visited Jonathan, and they have took him to his home. So now, what is his home? We'll get to learn today. So it's a part two. So this is heaven, he thought, and he had to smile at himself. It was hardly respectful to analyze heaven in the very moment that one flies up to enter it. As he came from earth now, above the clouds and in close formation with the two brilliant seagulls, he saw that his own body was growing as bright as theirs. True, the same young Jonathan Seagull was there that had always lived behind his golden eyes. But the outer form had changed. It felt like a seagull body, but already it flew far better than his old one had ever flown. Why? With half the effort, he thought. I will get twice the speed, twice the performance of my best days on earth. His feathers glowed brilliant white now, and his wings were smooth and perfect as sheets of polished silver. He began, delightedly, to learn about them, to press power into these new wings. At 250 miles per hour, he felt that he was nearing his level flight maximum speed. At 273, he thought that he was flying as fast as he could fly. and he was ever so faintly disappointed. There was a limit to how much the new body could do, and though it was much faster than his old level flight record, it was still a limit that would take great effort to crack. In heaven, he thought, there should be no limits. The clouds broke apart. His escorts called, "Happy landings, Jonathan," and vanished into thin air. He was flying over a sea toward a jagged shoreline. A very few seagulls were working the updrafts on the cliffs. Away off to the north, at the horizon itself, flew a few others. New sights, new thoughts, new questions. Why so few gulls? Heaven should be flogged with gulls. And why am I so tired all at once? Gulls in heaven are never supposed to be tired or to sleep. Where had he heard that? The memory of his life on earth was falling away. Earth had been a place where he had learned much, of course, but the details were blurred. Something about fighting for food and being outcast. The dozen gulls by the shoreline came to meet him, none saying a word. He felt only that he was welcome and that this was his home. It had been a big day for him, a day whose sunrise he no longer remembered. He turned to land on the beach, beating his wings to stop an inch in the air, then dropping lightly to the sand. The other girls landed too, but not one of them so much as flapped a feather. They swung into the wind, bright wings outstretched. Then somehow they changed the curve of their feathers until they had stopped in the same instant their feet touched the ground. It was beautiful control. But now Jonathan was just too tired to try it. Standing there on the beach, still without a word spoken, he was asleep. In the days that followed, Jonathan saw that there was as much to learn about flight in this place as there had been in the life behind him, but with a difference. Here were gulls who thought as he thought. For each of them, the most important thing in living was to reach out and touch perfection in that which they most loved to do, and that was to fly. They were magnificent birds, all of them, and they spent hour after hour every day practicing flight, testing advanced aeronautics. For a long time, Jonathan forgot about the world that he had come from, that place where the flock lived with its eyes tightly shut to the joy of flight, using its wings as means to the end of finding and fighting for food. But now and then, just for a moment, he remembered. He remembered it one morning when he was out with his instructor, while they rested on the beach after a session of folded wings snap rolls. "Where is everybody, Sullivan?" he asked silently, quite at home now with the easy telepathy that these gulls used instead of screens and cracks. "Why aren't there more of us here? Why? Where I came from, there were thousands and thousands of gulls. I know." Sullivan shook his head. "The only answer I can see, Jonathan, is that you are pretty well a one in a million bird. Most of us came along ever so slowly. We went from one world into another that was almost exactly like it, forgetting right away where we had come from, not caring where we were headed, living for the moment. Do you have any idea how many lives we must have gone through before we even got the first idea that there is more to life than eating or fighting or power in the flock? 1,000 lives, John, 10,000, and then another 100 lives until we began to learn that there is such a thing as perfection, and another 100 again to get the idea that our purpose for living is to find that perfection and show it forth. The same rule holds for us now. Of course, we choose our next world through what we learn in this one. Learn nothing, and the next world is the same as this one. all the same limitations and lead weights to overcome. He stretched his wings and turned to face the wind. But you, John, he said, learned so much at one time that you didn't have to go through 1,000 lives to reach this one. In a moment, they were airborne again, practicing. The formation point rolls were difficult, but though, but through the inverted half, Jonathan had to think upside down, reversing the curve of his wings and reversing it exactly in harmony with his instructors. Let's try it again, Sullivan said, over and over. Let's try it again. And finally, good. And they began practicing outside loops. One evening, the gulls that were not night flying stood together on the sand, thinking. Jonathan took all his courage in hand and walked to the elder gull, who, it was said, was soon to be moving beyond this world. Chiang, he said, a little nervously. The old seagull looked at him kindly. Yes, my son. In, instead of being enfeebled by age, the elder had been empowered by it. He could outfly any gull in the flock, and he had learned skills that the others were only gradually coming to know. Chiang, this world isn't heaven at all, is it? The elder smiled in the moonlight. You are learning again, Jonathan, he said. Well, what happens from here? Where are we going? Is there no such place as heaven? No, Jonathan, there is no such place. Heaven is not a place and it is not a time. Heaven is being perfect. He was silent for a moment. You are a fast, very fast flyer, aren't you? I enjoy speed, Jonathan said, taken aback, but proud that the elder had noticed. You will begin to touch heaven, Jonathan, in the moment that you touch perfect speed. And this isn't flying 1,000 miles an hour or a million or flying at the speed of light, because any number is a limit and perfection doesn't have limit. Perfect speed, my son, is being there. Without warning, Xiang vanished and appeared at the water's edge 50 feet away, all in the flicker of an instant. Then he vanished again and stood in the same millisecond at Jonathan's shoulders. Kind of a fun, he said. Jonathan was dazzled. He forgot to ask about heaven. How do you do that? What does it feel like? How far can you go? You can go to any place and to any time that you wish to go, the elder said. I have gone everywhere and every when I can think of. He looked across the sea. It's strange. The gulls who scorn perfection for the sake of travel go nowhere slowly. Those who put aside travel for the sake of perfection go anywhere instantly. Those who put aside travel for the sake of perfection go anywhere instantly. Remember, Jonathan, heaven isn't a place or a time because place and the time are so very meaningless. Heaven is. Can you teach me to fly like that? Jonathan Seagull trembled to conquer another unknown. Of course, if you wish to learn. I wish. When can we start? You could start now if you would like. I want to learn to fly like that, Jonathan said, and a strange light glowed in his eyes. Tell me what to do. Chang spoke slowly and watched the younger girl ever so carefully. To fly as fast as thought to anywhere that is, he said, you must begin by knowing that you have already arrived. You must begin by knowing that you have already arrived. The trick, according to Chiang, was for Jonathan to stop seeing himself as trapped inside a limited body that had a 42-inch wingspan and performance that could be plotted on a chart. The trick was to know that his true nature lived as perfect as an unwritten number, everywhere at once, across space and time. Jonathan kept at it fiercely, day after day, from before sunrise till past midnight, and for all his effort, he moved not a feather width from his spot. Forget about faith, Shang said it time and again. You didn't need faith to fly, you needed to understand flying. This is just the same. Now try again. Then one day, Jonathan, standing on the shore, closing his eyes, concentrating, all in a flash, knew what Xiang had been telling him. Why? That's true. I am a perfect, unlimited gull. He felt a great shock of joy. Good, said Xiang, and there was victory in his voice. Jonathan opened his eyes. He stood alone with the elder on a totally different seashore. Trees down to the water's edge, twin yellow suns turning overhead. At last, you have got the idea, Chang said. But your control needs a little work. Jonathan was stunned. Where are we? Utterly unimpressed with the strange surroundings, the elder brushed the question aside. We are on some planet, obviously, with a green sky and a double star for a sun. Jonathan made a scream of delight, the first sound he had made since he had left Earth. It works. Well, of course it works, John, said Xiang. It always works when you know what you're doing. Now about your control. By the time they returned, it was dark. The other girls looked at Jonathan with awe in their golden eyes, for they had seen him disappear from where he had been rooted for so long. He stood there, congratulations, for less than a minute. I'm the newcomer here. I'm just beginning. It is I who must learn from you. I wonder about that, John, said Sullivan, standing near. You have less fear of learning than any gull I have ever seen in 10,000 years. The flock fell silent, and Jonathan fidgeted in embarrassment. We can start working with time if you wish, Yang said, till you can fly the past and the future, and then you will be ready to begin the most difficult, the most powerful, the most fun of all. You will be ready to begin to fly up and know the meaning of kindness and of love. A month went by, or something that felt about like a month, and Jonathan learned at a tremendous rate. He always had learned quickly from ordinary experience, and now the special student of the elder himself. He took in new ideas like a streamlined, feathered computer. But then the day came that Shang vanished. He had been talking quietly with them all, exhorting them never to stop their learning and their practicing and their striving to understand more of the perfect invisible principle of all life. Then, as he spoke, his feathers went brighter and brighter, and at last turned so brilliant that no gull could look up upon him. Jonathan, he said, and these were the last words that he spoke. Keep working on love. When they could see again, Shang was gone. As the days went past, Jonathan found himself thinking time and again of the earth from which he had come. If he had known there just a tenth, just a hundredth of what he knew here, how much more life would have meant. He stood on the sand and fell to wondering if there was a gull back there who might be struggling to break out of his limits, to see the meaning of flight beyond the way of travel, to get a breadcrumb from a rowboat. Perhaps there might even have been one made outcast for speaking his truth in the face of the flock. And the more Jonathan practiced his kindness lessons, and the more he worked to know the nature of love, the more he wanted to go back to earth. For in spite of his lonely past, Jonathan Seagull was born to be an instructor, and his own way of demonstrating love was to give something of the truth that he had seen to a gull who asked only a chance to see truth for himself. Sullivan, adept now at thought speed flight and helping the others to learn, was doubtful. John, you were outcast once. Why do you think that any of the gulls in your old time would listen to you now? You know the proverb, and it's true. The gull sees farthest who flies highest. Those gulls where you came from are standing on the ground, quacking and fighting among themselves. They are 1,000 miles from heaven. And you say you want to show them heaven from where they stand? John, they can't see their own wingtips. Stay here. Help the new gulls here, the ones who are high enough to see what you have to tell them. He was quiet for a moment and then said, what if Chiang had gone back to his old words? Where would you have been today? The last point was the telling one, and Sullivan was right. The gull sees farthest who flies highest. Jonathan stayed and worked with the new birds coming in, who were all very bright and quick with their lessons. But the old feeling came back, and he couldn't help but think that there might be one or two gulls back on earth who would be able to learn too. How much more would he have known by now if Shang had come to him on the day that he was outcast? Sally, I must go back, he said at last. Your students are doing well. They can help you bring the newcomers along. Sullivan sighed, but he did not argue. I think I'll miss you, Jonathan, was all he said. Sally, for shame, Jonathan said in reproach. And don't be foolish. What are we trying to practice every day? If our friendship depends on things like space and time, then when we finally overcome space and time, we have destroyed our own brotherhood. But overcome space, and all we have left is here. Overcome time, and all we have left is now. And in the middle of here and now, don't you think that we might see each other once or twice? Sullivan Seagull laughed in spite of himself. You crazy bird, he said kindly. If anybody can show someone on the ground how to see 1,000 miles, it will be Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He looked at the sand. Goodbye, John, my friend. Goodbye, Sully. We'll meet again. And with that, Jonathan held in thought an image of the great gull flocks on the shore of another time, and he knew with practiced ease that he was not bone and feather, but a perfect idea of freedom and flight, limited by nothing at all. Fletcher Lynn Seagull was still quite young, but already he knew that no bird had ever been so harshly treated by any flock or with so much injustice. I don't care what they say, he thought fiercely, and his vision blurred as he flew out towards the far cliffs. There is so much more to flying than just flapping around from place to place. A mosquito does that. One little barrel roll around the elder gull just for fun, and I'm outcast. Are they blind? Can't they see? Can't they think of the glory that it will be when we really learn to fly? I don't care what they think. I will show them what flying is. I will be pure outlaw if that's the way they want it, and I will make them so sorry. The voice came inside his own head, and though it was very gentle, it startled him so much that he faltered and stumbled in the air. Don't be harsh on them, Fletcher Seagull. In casting you out, the other gulls have only hurt themselves, and one day they will know this, and one day they will see what you see. Forgive them and help them to understand. An inch from his right wing tip flew the most brilliant white gull in all the world, gliding effortlessly along. not moving a feather at what was very nearly Fletcher's top speed. There was a moment of chaos in the young bird. What's going on? Am I mad? Am I dead? What is this? Low and calm, the voice went on within his thought, demanding an answer. Fletcherlin Seagull, do you want to fly? Yes, I want to fly. Fletcherlin Seagull, do you want to fly so much that you will forgive the flock and learn and go back to them Monday and work to help them know? There was no lying to the magnificent, skillful being, no matter how proud or how hurt a bird was Fletcher Seagull. I do, he said softly. Then Fletch, that bright creature, said to him, and the voice was very kind. Let's begin with level flight. So that was the story, friends. That was the story for today. As we can see, what all Jonathan Livingston Seagull had done in the other worlds, and he had learned so many things from the elderly ones there, and who was so kind, and who was teaching Jonathan, or who was making Jonathan to understand to work on love, which is the most important thing. And and here Jonathan comes back because there is a strong drive within himself that he has to be back with the flock so that he can be a great teacher and he can make them understand. And he was thinking that there might be few seagulls who will be with the same thought of what Jonathan had. And yes, now came when Jonathan had come back, he had found Fletcher Gull, and now the teaching begins. And there is this beautiful point that Jonathan asked of Fletcher that after you learn everything, will you be able to forgive the flock who had outcasted you? And that is where Fletcher said, I do. Yes. So wonderful, friends. There is so many learnings from this chapter, from this part. And yeah, it's a beautiful story. Since Richard Bach is into flights and he's into flying, so he had put this in a beautiful way of portraying Jonathan reaching the flights and heights, and letting us know about the essence of the whole story. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. And if you have anything to share, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Or if you have simply enjoyed, that's perfect. Yeah, Sajjan Sangat. Yeah. Yeah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Kimshuk.
Atmavandan Masters,
And then,
Madhu Garu, really uh, deep essence of each word and nicely narrated. And it's like, as you mentioned, that it is our story. You mentioned yesterday that it's our story.
yeah,
You're absolutely right. Deepti told me that masters have actually had big troubles. So I was not sure whether she was telling it to me because I already knew it. And I was just going through, as in this episode, it mentions that Jonathan wants to go back number of times and bring about one or two people who really, seagulls who really would want to be learners to their perfection. And that's exactly what I started writing in different groups. around 2 years ago, and that uh, is just like one more story where there is a man who's holding the birds from flying, but he doesn't realize that the birds have friends, uh, and when they combine together, they can actually pick up the whole uh, web and fly away. So, and that's exactly what was the kind of a trigger in my mind also, that let's do it together.
Mm,
Let's do it together, and we all can fly. Then my gurus came and told me, "Are you mad? You have been chosen to understand this small thing, which is very big in the eyes of the common men who are just fighting on the ground for power and name and fame and money and uh, enjoyment. So can't you understand that you are the only one who will come along? You have heard it so many times. You have learned it so many times. Why do you want to go back?" I said, "Why did you come and pick me? If you pick me, then I'll pick others." So it's exactly replication, and I really appreciate that it's so beautifully written, beautifully spoken by you, and uh, the flights that I've taken with different group members within our group uh, since the time I first joined to maybe 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, yeah, 3 years ago to be precise, June or July 2021. That was the first time I joined. So 3 years now, and you are absolutely right that if you want to forego the travel for the sake of perfection, then you have to be still at one place. So it's basically a very old truth that wherever you are, if you are not content and if you are not improving there, you might fail when you travel far seas, and chances of failure are more. So be perfect where you are first, then take a flight. This is exactly what I was told. That for 10 years or maybe 20 years, there were so many masters who were in kind of a sleep or incubation, and I was not aware that where were they doing this. And I came to know they were doing it in me. So it became a much more responsible job for me to be the part of the freedom group and not let anybody be left alone. However, understanding it that I am always alone. So that kind of wisdom, which is being depicted in the write-ups of uh, the writers who have already reached the epitome of realizations and they're writing it in different languages. That's where my point came, that we are beyond language, we are beyond words, and astral travels and other things which we have experienced, we would come down and take new bodies and do the similar things, maybe at greater speed, like we just got that reference, 273 miles per hour. So that kind of thing, and still feeling we are limited, even though we know that we are limitless, we're still feeling we are limited. That's where we need to find the group that is called the soul family. And I still have a feeling that there is only one family. And as we all know, there is one and only one. Rest our bodies for experience, for withholding, for realizing, for stabilizing, for mesmerizing, for satisfying, for so many words, but ultimately no word. And thank you for narrating a beautiful story again. And the narration is inside me now. So you are narrating it inside me. I don't feel that you're narrating it outside. You're doing it inside me, and it's something which you have been asked to do probably from within, you know, and that's the connect from within to within, and we are all within the same, and that's where three things: you inside, me inside, and the whole aspect inside is exactly the same. Tattvamasi, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm, Aham Brahmasmi. All three are the same. So thank you so much, Madhu. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much,
Love,
Kimshik.
gratitude, respect, freedom. That's and freedom beyond anything and everything, anyone and everyone, anybody and everybody. Freedom beyond barriers, limitless. That's what I bless you with, and I respect you with that, and with full gratitude and love and affection from within to within, in within. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimshik.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hey, hi, Raksha.
Thank you. Wonderful reading.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raksha. So, all right then, we will all see each other again.